Hey, no fluff today. Just some of the most unsettling Reddit stories I've come across recently. Subscribe so you don't miss the next one, and let's go. My fiance, 31M, has been deleting my family's contact numbers and replacing them with fake ones. I've been texting him, thinking it was them. This one starts quiet, deceptive in how normal everything seems on the surface, how easily the explanation sits in your mind and never bothers you again, until suddenly it's bothering you so much you can't ignore it anymore. I'm 27 female, and I've been with my fiance, 31 male, for 4 years. We got engaged about 18 months ago, and honestly, things seemed really good. Or so I thought. About 9 months ago, my family stopped reaching out. Fewer texts from my mom, my dad forgot my birthday, my brother went silent. It hurt, but my fiance was supportive. He'd say they were just busy, that distance happens naturally. He was the stable one, always there. Last week, I finally called my mom instead of waiting. I'd put it off, not wanting to seem desperate, but I missed her voice. So I scrolled to Mom in my contacts and hit call. A man answered. Not my dad, not anyone I knew. A complete stranger. I stammered an apology and hung up, hands shaking. Then I opened my contacts and really looked. My mom's number was registered to an account under my fiance's name. So was my dad's, my brother's, my sister's, all of them. Every single family contact. I stared at my phone for 5 minutes, trying to process what I was seeing. There's a specific kind of horror that comes with realizing someone you trust has been lying to you on that scale. Not a small lie, not a mistake. This was methodical. This was planned. And it had been going on for 9 months with her completely unaware. This is how isolation works. This is how someone erases your connections one contact at a time and becomes your entire world without you ever realizing it happened. The real horror came in the details, and OP needed to see all of them, had to check, even though each discovery felt like a betrayal. I don't even know how long I stared at my phone after that call. My mom's number wasn't hers at all. So I started checking, really checking. My brother's number? Registered to an account with my fiance's name. My dad's? Same thing. My sister? Same. Every single one. Not just mom. I went through my contacts like I was defusing a bomb, clicking into each family member's info. Each one felt like a punch. Each name was registered to accounts that didn't belong to my family. They belonged to him. These weren't his normal accounts. They were new accounts, created specifically. All of them tied back to his name, his ID, his documents. Every text from my brother, every call from my dad, every voice message from my sister asking how I was doing, all of it came from him. 9 months of this. 9 months of him pretending to be my entire family. And I'd been so grateful for it. I'd told him how much those messages meant to me, how grateful I was that my family still reached out even when they seemed distant. I sat on my bedroom floor and I couldn't breathe. Every single person. Not one of them was real. The scope of the manipulation was the thing that broke her. Not one fake contact. All of them. Every voice message, every text, every moment of perceived family connection, manufactured by him. Every single check-in, every encouraged moment, orchestrated by the same person she trusted most. And then, the question that would haunt her. What was he saying to her as them? What version of himself was he building through her family's voices? How long had he been planning this? The realization hit different once she was alone. OP had thought she was calling her mom. A stranger answered. Now, sitting on her couch, the weight of it was settling in. I couldn't stop refreshing my contacts. Mom, dad, brother, sister. Every single one registered to accounts with his name. Every text from them, every voice message, my mom's laugh, my dad's advice. And my stomach turned cold because suddenly I was asking myself, how many months? How long had I been texting him, confiding in him while thinking I was talking to my family? The messages felt different now, supportive, always there, always saying exactly what I needed to hear. And that's what terrified me. Either he was listening somehow, or he was building these texts based on things I'd told him directly. This was premeditated. Not an accident. Not him forgetting to tell me their numbers changed. I sat there, scrolling through conversations with people I thought were my family. The timeline clicked when I realized it started about 9 months ago, right around when he proposed and my parents said they needed to think about it. That was when the family calls dropped off. That was when he started being my shoulder to cry on about how distant they'd become. I had to confront him. I didn't know what I'd say, but I couldn't sit in this apartment any longer without knowing why. Was he protecting me? Was this control? I made myself dial his number. The comment section filled instantly. People weren't mincing words about what they were seeing. This is absolutely insane. This is textbook abuse and isolation. Please document everything, get a lawyer, and stay safe. I'm so glad you trusted your gut enough to check. Some people would have let this continue for years. Your family must be devastated and relieved at the same time. The fact that he confessed so easily is striking. Did he seem remorseful at all when confronted? Or was he defensive and turning it around? He wasn't remorseful at all. He got defensive and angry, kept insisting he was protecting me from bad influences. When I showed him the phone logs, he just shut down. It's like he didn't feel guilty. He felt caught. That's what terrifies me most. On to the next part. OP confronted him that night. The full architecture of his plan revealed itself. He had burner phones with screenshots saved. I gave everything to my lawyer and the police. I asked him directly about my mom's number being tied to his account. He didn't try to deny it. He just confessed. 9 months ago, right after my parents told him they didn't think he was ready to marry me, he deleted every real contact I had. Mom, Dad, my brother, my sister, all gone. He created new numbers tied to accounts in his name, burner phones with different SIM cards. He had screenshots saved of every conversation he had with me pretending to be my family. Years of texts about how busy they were, how sorry they were for drifting away, how much they loved me. That was all him. Every single message. Every call at 2 a.m. when I was panicking about them hating me. Him. He was my entire support system while telling me my real family had abandoned me. He said he was protecting me from people who didn't understand him, didn't see his potential, that he was the only one who truly loved me. I took everything to my lawyer and the police that night. The comment section erupted. The fact that he comforted you about your distant family while knowing he was the reason they seemed distant, that's sociopathic. He was gaslighting you deliberately. This is one of the most calculated forms of isolation I've heard of. He deliberately set up an infrastructure to cut you off. Stay far away from him. I'm trying to. My lawyer is working on a restraining order. The worst part is wondering if I would have caught this if my mom hadn't called when she did. So he twisted your parents' concerns about him into a reason to cut you off completely? That's next-level manipulation. Exactly. He used their legitimate concerns about his behavior as justification for isolating her. It's a classic abuser move. Flip the narrative so he becomes the victim protecting her. And that's where things landed with this one. On to the next story. That night, everything changed. OP packed and left. The next morning, she was sitting across from her parents, the people she thought had abandoned her, finally safe in their home. The first call was to the police. He had burner phones with screenshots saved. I gave everything to my lawyer and the police. The detective said this stuff happens more often than people think. I didn't sleep that first week after I left. I kept checking my phone thinking he'd message from a different number, some new account, anything. He didn't. Part of me was relieved. Part of me was terrified of what came next. My lawyer is filing for a restraining order. The engagement is over. I'm having a jeweler melt down the ring because I can't look at it without feeling sick. Right now, I'm trying to figure out how to move forward when someone who was supposed to spend his life with me has been systematically playing me for months. My family is being patient with me, but I can see the weight of it in their faces. The guilt that they didn't push harder when they sensed something was wrong. I told them it's not their fault. He was calculated. He was patient. He was methodical. That's what scares me the most. The comment section filled fast on this one. Please tell me you have those phone logs and account registrations saved somewhere secure. This is evidence for police and your lawyer. The way he deflected when caught, I was protecting you, instead of showing any actual remorse, is a massive red flag. That's not guilt. That's someone who got caught. What happened to OP is isolation through deception, a control tactic so complete it rewired her entire reality. For 9 months, she believed her family had ghosted her. Every painful text she didn't receive, every silent phone call she thought they'd given up on making. Meanwhile, he was the only voice she heard, the only one checking on her, reinforcing himself as her anchor. That's calculated. That's not a mistake or a moment of bad judgment. That's systematic psychological abuse dressed up as protection. The fact that he had burner phones with screenshots saved, evidence he was documenting it all, suggests this wasn't impulsive. He was building a case for something, maybe leverage, maybe just proof. Either way, OP did exactly what she needed to do. Now on to the next one. I think my mom is deliberately poisoning my dad with her herbal remedies, and I finally found proof. This starts with a daughter noticing patterns, and then finding proof of something unthinkable. My dad is, and my mom is. A year ago, he was fine, active, solid. Then came a bad flu. My mom decided he needed saving. She started with herbal teas to help him heal. He recovered, normal so far, except she didn't stop. New remedies appeared constantly. Powders in his coffee, tinctures in his water, some obscure plant from Southeast Asia, a rare mushroom blend, suddenly essential to his survival. Dad was confused by it but trusted her. They'd been married 32 years. Now he's skeletal. His hands shake. He gets confused mid-conversation, asks the same question 3 times in an hour. He barely leaves the house. Every time I mention a real doctor, my mom shuts it down. He's detoxifying, she says. The symptoms are proof it's working. Last week, I found her journal behind their nightstand. What I read made my blood freeze. She wasn't just making remedies, she was documenting. Clinical notes on his weight loss down to the pound, times when his tremors peaked, observations of his confusion episodes. One entry from 2 months ago, all capitals, dose increased, slower than expected, patience. I sat there holding it and couldn't stop shaking. OP reread the journal slowly, realizing the full scope of what she was looking at. The entries spanned months, not casual tracking, but clinical documentation. Weight loss in precise pounds, timestamps on tremors, notes on confusion episodes. Then I saw the references. Alkaloid blends, cardiac response timing, dosage increases marked uppercase, dose increased, slower than expected, patience. I started researching. The substances Mom mentioned, some are poisons. Compounds that target cardiac and neurological systems, exactly what I was watching happen to Dad. Her online community worshipped her, women calling her transcendent. She'd written, "He will understand eventually. Everything serves a higher purpose." When I tried talking to her, she dismissed it instantly. "You're being hysterical. He's detoxifying. This is what healing looks like." Dad trusted her. When I suggested doctors, he said, "Your mom knows best." She'd positioned herself as irreplaceable, the only one who understood his journey. My sibling didn't believe me, said it might be innocent tracking, but I was watching my dad fade and no one was listening. And when OP posted this, the comments came back with a specific kind of clarity. This is not normal behavior. If you genuinely believe he's been poisoned, call Adult Protective Services and the police immediately. Do not confront her alone. Save every scrap of evidence you have. The journal entry is everything. No innocent person writes patience and dose increased about their spouse's declining health. That's documentation of intent. This is premeditation. Did you ever manage to see what was actually in those remedies? The ingredient labels or anything concrete? She locked everything in her bedroom cabinet after I started asking questions. But I saw one bottle once, labeled Heart Support Botanical Blend, with no ingredient list visible. It smelled bitter, almost chemical. When I asked what was in it, she screamed at me to get out of her room and moved everything. Looking back at the timeline, that's exactly when his tremors started getting worse. I wish I'd pushed harder then, but she was so hostile about it. The locked cabinet, the chemical smell, the screaming, the timing matching his decline perfectly. That's when OP knew this wasn't paranoia. This was evidence of something deliberate. But OP kept reading. I photographed every page. The entries were clinical. Dose increased Tuesday. Appetite decline observed Thursday. Weight down 1.5 pounds. Confusion peak at 48 hours post-administration. Must account for tolerance buildup. One entry from 2 months back. Patience. Transcendence takes time. I looked up the ingredients she listed. Digitalis, aconite. These cause exactly what Dad is experiencing: cardiac stress, confusion, atrophy. The realization hit me. She's not just giving him remedies. She's been experimenting, adjusting dosages, timing everything, documenting his decline like a scientist. I thought about calling the police. But what would I say? My mom journaled about my dad's weight loss? They need actual poison in his blood, which they won't test without a warrant. This just looks like a devoted wife. Dad barely eats now. This morning he asked me the same question 4 times. When's your mother coming back? His brain is degrading. She's constantly at his side, insisting she's the only one who understands him. Yesterday I watched her prepare one of her remedies. The precision. Measuring powders on a scale, crushing them slowly, mixing in honey. She looked like she was creating something sacred. That's when I knew. This wasn't negligence. This was planned and documented. A case study with my father as the subject. I had 2 choices: confront her or take Dad to a hospital and let the doctors find what's in his blood. The comments section on this one didn't pull punches. This is exactly what my sister did to her husband before he had a stroke at 49. These online wellness communities enable this because they see control as spiritual guidance. Your dad needs out of that house now. Legitimate herbal practitioners don't lock away what they're giving people or hide ingredient lists. That's poison keeper behavior, not herbalist behavior. Exactly. And documenting his symptoms like progress checkpoints? That's not medicine. That's an experiment. That's watching your subject decline and adjusting the dosage. That's a predator with a journal. Digitalis poisoning causes exactly those symptoms: tremors, confusion, weight loss, cardiac issues. If that's what testing found, she knew exactly what she was doing. This isn't negligence. This is attempted murder. OP was alone with this now, and the clock was running out. Days passed. Then OP came back to post an update that changed everything. My dad is hospitalized, and the doctors confirmed what was in his blood. I confronted her, and she didn't deny any of it, just didn't see the problem. She said she was helping him transcend, that he'd agreed to this months ago. When I asked Dad directly, he had zero memory of this conversation. He looked terrified. I packed a bag and took him to the ER myself while she screamed that I was ruining her life's work. The doctors ran blood work. Digitalis. Alkaloids they couldn't fully identify. The lab director looked physically ill. This wasn't supplements or miscalculation. This was deliberate, measured dosing. Police came within hours. Mom was arrested pending investigation. They seized her journal as evidence. The original post blew up with Reddit chaos. Some defended her. Alternative medicine saved my life. Western medicine is corrupt. But most were horrified. I've been replying to everything, trying to answer questions about Dad's condition, the timeline, whether we have proof. The whole thread is just people speculating whether he'll recover, whether his mind will come back. I don't know what comes next, but at least he's safe now. The comment section split wide open. Some questioned whether it really was intentional. Others could see the pattern clearly. I'm sorry, but poisoning is a serious accusation. Have you actually seen her administering things, or are you inferring from her behavior? Either way, your dad needs emergency medical attention immediately. The scariest part is how she reframed abuse as caregiving and got everyone to accept it as normal. That's psychological control hiding inside wellness. I'm so sorry you're living this. OP came back a few days later with an update post. My dad is hospitalized, and the doctors confirmed what was in his blood. The hospital ran every test imaginable. Digitalis, unidentified alkaloids. The cardiologist pulled me aside and said what he found in Dad's blood work was consistent with chronic poisoning. Consistent, that's the word he used. Mom was arrested. Police took her statement. She's claiming she was helping him transcend and that he agreed to this months ago. Dad has no memory of any agreement. No memory of anything, really. The confusion is permanent damage. They have her journal. They have my photographs of the journal entries. The one that keeps me awake is dated 2 months ago. Dose increased, slower than expected. Patience. She was patient. She had time. She had him completely isolated and me labeled as hysteria-prone. Dad's in cardiac ICU. Doctors say recovery is possible, but it's going to take months. The alkaloids caused organ damage. His kidneys are struggling. But he's breathing on his own now. The update dropped, and the internet did what the internet does. Reddit tore itself apart. Some users defended her, said alternative medicine saved their lives, called OP a family destroyer, warned of karmic consequences. Wellness community members found OP's profile. DMs flooded in. Threats. Warnings about what happens to people who betray devoted caregivers, whose negative energy affects healing. OP deleted the original post, deleted the update, went silent. And that's what makes this stick. The care was real. The devotion was real. The documentation was meticulous. No one suspects the person at the bedside, the wife who brings remedies in ceramic bottles, who whispers encouragement while mixing powders, who stays at his side through every moment of decline. It's the perfect cover. Alternative medicine lets you claim symptoms as healing, decline as detoxification. Isolation becomes protection. Gaslighting becomes love. Clinical precision becomes caregiving. By the time anyone realizes what's happening, the damage is done. On to the next one. I grew up in a small town. I'm realizing now that something very wrong happened to many of us in Dr. Hartley's office. This is a story that starts in a place where everything seems absolutely safe, where everyone knows your name, where the people in authority have a kind of power that nobody questions. I grew up in a small Pennsylvania town of about 2,500. The kind of place where you run into your parents' friends at the grocery store. Our family doctor was Dr. Ronald Hartley. He'd been practicing there nearly 35 years. My father played poker with him once a month for 15 years. He knew every kid born after 1980, donated to the school, sponsored the Little League team. Everyone spoke of him as a pillar of the community, solid, trustworthy, part of the fabric. When I was young, I never questioned anything about him. The checkup started around age 4 or 5. Nothing seemed out of place at first. But one thing I do remember. At some point, my mother would be asked to step out of the room. He'd say she needed to learn independence, or it was standard procedure. I'd be alone with him. Even as a kid, something felt wrong. I can't pin down exactly what anymore. It was decades ago. But that feeling stuck. I buried it so deep I stopped acknowledging it even happened. Last month, I reconnected with my childhood best friend Sarah through Facebook. We hadn't talked in 12 years. I commented on one of her posts, and she called me within an hour, something she apparently never does with anyone from our hometown. Her voice was different when she asked, "Do you remember anything uncomfortable about Dr. Hartley's office?" My stomach dropped. I said yes. For years, nobody questioned it. That's how the silence worked in a small town like that. It was just how things were. But that call was just the beginning. What Sarah had to say next would change everything. 3 hours. That's how long they talked that first night. Not in one sitting. Sarah called right after work and they just kept going. Neither of them could stop. The conversation felt like unlocking a door neither had meant to open. She started by asking what I remembered. "Did he ever ask my mom to leave the exam room?" "Yes," I said. He told her it was standard procedure, that I needed to learn independence. She needed to accept that too. The message was clear. Moms couldn't coddle. "What about when we were alone?" I didn't want to answer, but she waited. I told her I remembered his hand on my inner thigh during exams, how he'd take longer than necessary, how he'd tell me not to mention certain things to my mom, never threatening, just casual. This is between us. Mom's worry. I'd buried that memory for 30 years. The worst part wasn't even the memory, it was the shame. Crushing, suffocating shame that I'd let it happen, that I'd never told anyone, that I'd somehow known it was wrong but said nothing anyway. That shame was why I stayed silent, and it's the same shame that kept me from seeing the pattern clearly. When you're a kid and an adult tells you something is normal and private, you believe them. You don't question. You internalize the wrongness as your own failure. Then Sarah said something that stopped my heart. She wasn't calling alone. She was part of a private group chat. 5 other women from our graduating class, all connected through a trauma support forum. All of them had appointments with Dr. Hartley between ages 4 and 12, late 90s and early 2000s. All of them felt something was wrong. All of them had buried it. She said they'd been quietly investigating for weeks, comparing notes, reaching out to classmates carefully. No accusations yet, just asking, "Do you remember anything uncomfortable?" They found 17 verified cases total. 17. Not isolated incidents spread across decades. A pattern. A systematic, decades-long pattern that an entire small town, everyone from the principal to the PTA president to the Little League coaches, never saw or never said anything about. And suddenly OP's childhood shame made a terrible kind of sense. Not a personal failure, not something OP had allowed to happen through weakness or complicity, but a predator's weapon, designed and deployed with clinical precision against the silence of a trusting community. Sarah's next revelation nearly stopped my heart. She told me they'd been doing quiet research, cross-referencing the group chat against old-school records, calling people they trusted. 17 verified cases. 17. All girls from our graduating class or close to it, all between ages 4 and 12 in the late 90s and early 2000s. Not one of them had ever talked to the others about it until they found each other on that trauma forum. They'd all buried it independently for years. And now when they compared notes, the room he'd ask your mom to leave, the way he'd tell you it was normal, the way his hand would rest on you just long enough to make you uncomfortable, the warnings not to mention it to your parents because they'd worry unnecessarily. Every single detail aligned. I felt something shift in me when Sarah laid it out. This wasn't isolated abuse, this was systematic. This was a pattern so deliberate that a man had built a whole practice around it, had done it for decades, had never been questioned. The whole town trusted him. My father played poker with him. He sponsored Little League. He knew every kid born in the 80s and 90s, and nobody saw it. Or maybe they didn't want to. Maybe it was easier not to ask questions. The comment section lit up with people recognizing their own childhoods. Check Pennsylvania's statute of limitations on child abuse. It depends on when you discovered the abuse, not when it happened. You might still have a legal window. We brought this up with the lawyer immediately. The discovery question is the issue. Did we know something was wrong as children, which would start the clock when we turned 18? Or did we discover what actually happened more recently? 4 of us technically discovered this through the group chat within the last year, so our window might still be open. The lawyer is cautiously optimistic but warned us about evidentiary challenges with childhood memories. The defense will argue we're reconstructing memories based on suggestion from each other, which is technically true, but we all remember enough independently that there's corroboration. The fact that you all corroborate each other independently is powerful. Consistent allegations across unrelated women is statistically nearly impossible to dismiss in court. Please talk to a lawyer in another county immediately. Document everything: screenshots, dates, consistent details. If this goes anywhere, consistency across victims is everything. 3 weeks passed. Sarah sent a message to the group chat. The police won't touch it. His son is chief. 3 weeks in, Sarah finally sent the real update. Dr. Hartley retired in 2008. He's still alive, still in our town, and every Saturday he volunteers at the public library reading stories to children. He still has access. When we asked about going to police, we learned why no one will touch this. His son is the police chief, the actual chief of police. So when one of our group tried to report it quietly, doors were closing before we even finished talking about what happened. But here's what the silence looks like now. Jessica is a pediatrician. She chose that career specifically because of what he did to her. She's been working in pediatrics for 9 years, hyper aware of every boundary, making sure she never becomes what he was. Maria attempted suicide twice. Twice. She only told her therapist the full truth about Dr. Hartley this year. It's been 25 years. It took her a quarter century to say it out loud to a professional. Emma left the day she turned 18. 13 years. She hasn't stepped foot in that town once because being there means remembering. And there are 14 others like her carrying this into their adult lives, into their jobs, their relationships, their sense of safety. We were kids. He took something from us that we're still trying to name, and he's still there, still reading to children, no one stopping him. The comments that came next revealed something chilling, patterns across different towns, different decades. I grew up in a similar town with a different perpetrator. The "but he was such a good man" narrative is the most dangerous part. Your town will gaslight you. Don't let that stop you. This is true, and it's the hardest part. The gaslighting will hurt more than the legal process. Small town reputations are everything. The town will rally around the good man, and these women will be cast as ungrateful or vindictive. That's the real trauma they'll face coming forward. And that's where it stops. Dr. Hartley is still there, still reading to children every Saturday, still untouchable, still in their town. On to the next one. 3 weeks of silence. 5 women in a private chat, building a trust that came too late. The police won't touch it. His son is chief. It started to feel real in the 3rd week. After comparing notes for days, each account lining up with impossible precision, details none of us had spoken aloud in decades suddenly matching across 7 different childhoods, we decided someone had to try the official route. 2 of us reached out to a lawyer in the next county over. Distance mattered. We couldn't risk someone locally knowing before we even filed. But when we asked the lawyer how to report, the answer came back hollow. Dr. Hartley retired 15 years ago. He's still alive, still in town, still volunteering at the library on Saturday mornings reading to kids. And his son is the chief of police. The lawyer said it gently. The institutional path here isn't safe. That was the day the paralysis got worse, not better. We were more sure than ever that something terrible happened, and more certain than ever that nobody could help us. I haven't told my parents. I probably never will. I created this account because the shame that kept us silent for 30 years is still so heavy it bends what we'll admit to our own families. The comment section on this one hit different. Before filing anything, connect with Rain or a trauma-informed therapist. Coming forward can destabilize you emotionally. You need a support system in place first. And maybe that's the real horror here. The doctor is one piece. The true crime is what comes after. The silence. The parents who never suspected. The institutions that let it stand. The way shame made 17 people hide for decades. The whole architecture of a small town, whether by design or through blindness, built to keep certain truths buried. That's the mechanism. That's what doesn't change. On to the next one. I'm a park ranger, and I saw something I literally cannot look at. I'm not joking. A ranger settles in for another night shift in a remote sector. Solo, professional, the kind of person trained to stay calm in emergencies. But tonight, something happens that will shatter his grip on reality. I work solo night shifts in a remote sector of the park. I've been doing this for 6 years. I'm trained for emergencies, search and rescue, wildlife encounters. I know what I'm doing out there. That's why what happened tonight doesn't make any sense to me. Around 2 in the morning, I was doing a routine patrol of the eastern sector when I spotted someone near the tree line. Tall woman wearing a blue dress. I could see her silhouette against the dark. At first, I thought she was a lost hiker. I radioed it in and called out to her, asked if she needed help. She turned toward me. That's when I tried to look directly at her face, and I couldn't. I physically could not focus my eyes on it. Not because it was blurry or obscured by shadow. My eyes would not obey the command to focus there. The harder I tried, the more my vision would skitter away, like my brain was actively refusing to process what was in front of me. Then she spoke. I heard sound coming from her mouth, but it wasn't words. It wasn't any language. It was just noise. Raw, incomprehensible sound that my brain could not parse into meaning. I backed away. Everything in me screamed that something was catastrophically, fundamentally wrong with what I was looking at. But I know it was real. I know I'm not the first. And that's the statement. Cold, professional. A man describing something that fundamentally shouldn't exist, but he's lived with training that demands evidence and composure. What makes this hit different is the refusal to dramatize it. He's not begging for advice. He's not panicking. He's documenting the impossible, like a ranger filing a report. That's when the impossible started to explain itself. When I tried to look at her face, something in my brain said no. My eyes refused to focus. The harder I pushed, the worse it got. Then I tried to listen to what she was saying. It wasn't language. It was like static trying to form words. My brain couldn't decode it. I was terrified. Not the usual kind of afraid. This was the fear of encountering something wrong with reality itself. I tried to move closer anyway. The moment I did, her movements weren't right. Her movements weren't human. Something was deeply wrong about the way she existed in space. I could see the edges, though. In my peripheral, she was impossibly tall, maybe 7 feet or more. A dress, solid blue. Her skin was pale, almost colorless. But the moment my eyes tried to move toward her face, it all shut down. I backed away and ran. I made it to the patrol car. My keys took 3 tries because my hands were shaking. When I got back to the station, I sat for 20 minutes trying to convince myself it was a hallucination. But I knew that wasn't what happened. Something was out there, something real, and something in my own mind had a hard-coded refusal to see it. He sat there in the office, thinking about peripheral vision and the limits of human perception, about how the brain has safety mechanisms to protect you from things that don't make sense, and about how something in the park had triggered every single one of them. That refusal to see, that shutdown, would keep him awake for weeks. But what came next was worse. Because denial only works until you start asking questions, until you start looking at the incident logs. Back at the station, the first thing I did was try to write it down. The moment my pen hit the incident log, I stopped. How was I supposed to describe what happened? Unit reported presence of unidentifiable entity displaying anomalous perceptual properties? They'd think I'd had a psychotic break. I sat there staring at the blank page for 20 minutes, trying different angles. Nothing worked. Every attempt made it sound worse, more delusional. So I didn't file the report. Instead, I pulled the old logs from that sector, years of them, going back. I knew Derek and Marcus had pulled overnight shifts out there. I didn't ask them directly about what I saw. That felt dangerous somehow, like saying the words out loud would cement how insane I sounded. But I started asking around casually. Hey, you ever get weird incident reports from the North Tree Line? Anything unusual come through the system for Sector 7? I watched their faces when I said it. Derek's jaw tightened. Marcus looked at me and then looked away. They exchanged this glance, not quick like they didn't want me to see it, but deliberate, like they were checking if I knew something. And I suddenly understood. I wasn't the first one, not even close. Whatever I saw, other rangers had seen it too. The thread started filling up with people asking the same questions I was. The fact that your brain won't let you perceive her properly is worse than any physical threat. That's your nervous system detecting something genuinely wrong. The inability to perceive something across multiple witnesses suggests intentional obscuring. Whatever this is, it wants to remain perception-proof. That's genuinely terrifying. I worked security for years and quit after night 3 because of things I couldn't explain. Trust your instincts. Get out. By the time I logged off, I knew what I had to do. Dig deeper into those logs. Weeks passed. OP dug deeper. I went through the logs and found her. 4 years of sightings. Weeks went by and I couldn't let it go. That night in Sector 7 consumed me. So I did something I shouldn't have. I pulled the incident logs. Not officially, just looking. The first one was Marcus, October 2021. He wrote, "Encountered a tall woman, blue dress, pale, unable to perceive facial features clearly. Her voice registers as incomprehensible noise." He filed it as equipment malfunction. 2022, 2 more reports. Sarah and James, both Sector 7, both autumn. Both used nearly identical wording about her. Both reports were filed as psychological incidents. 2023, 3 sightings. Same sector, same season, same entity. 2024, including my encounter, 4 more. Then I made the calls, all of them off the record. Every ranger who'd filed a report, and they all corroborated before I even finished describing what I'd experienced. They all saw her. They all felt that same impossible sensory breakdown. Eyes that refuse to focus, voice that becomes pure noise. Identical experiences, separated by months and years. And every single one of them had been told by administration to bury it. Psych incident, equipment malfunction, wildlife misidentification. She's been in this park for at least 4 years that we know about, possibly much longer. And park administration has been systematically covering it up. I'm putting in my transfer request, but I'm documenting everything first. All the reports, all the correlations, all of it. The comment section erupted. "Please tell me you reported this to someone outside the park. Your administration will bury this completely. Have you considered it could be a neurological glitch? Maybe stress-induced prosopagnosia combined with auditory processing issues?" Prosopagnosia doesn't manifest suddenly for one person in the woods. It's consistent across all faces and develops gradually. Stress hallucinations also don't typically affect multiple independent witnesses identically. This doesn't fit any diagnostic framework. That realization was the breaking point. They'd all seen it. Administration knew. For years they'd known, and they'd buried it systematically. This was bigger than one encounter now. It was institutional silence. The ranger came back weeks later with a darker discovery. He had dug through the logs, cross-referenced every night shift in that sector, and what he found changed everything. I went through the logs and found her. 4 years of sightings. I went through every log from the past 5 years. Once I knew what to look for, gaps, vague language, archived reports, the pattern became obvious. 6 confirmed sightings of the woman in blue. Ranger Hayes saw her 2 years ago, got vertigo. Ranger Clemens, same thing. Eyes couldn't focus, couldn't make out her face. Nobody connected them because nobody talks about it. When I asked quiet questions, they admitted it. Hayes kept a personal journal because official reports were useless. "Who reports what you can't see?" he asked. "There's no protocol, no form. It gets buried or not reported at all." I'm putting in for a transfer and documenting everything separately. Dates, times, interviews with the other rangers. Off the record. Nobody will believe it anyway. But the fact that this has been in our sector for 4 years, appearing the same way, in the same place, it proves I'm not insane. That's something. The comment section filled with people connecting the dots faster than any institution ever would. Sounds like something that exists partially outside normal perception. The fact that other people see her means it's real, regardless of what your brain thinks. And here's what lingers. The ranger got his transfer. The documentation sits in a personal file that will probably never be read officially. The woman in blue is still out there, invisible to everyone who encounters her. Institutional silence. Perception as a cage. And somewhere in the places humans rarely go, there are things we've chosen not to see. And that is the last story for today.